What's up, demons and demonettes? Tis I, Trexie, a demon, a queen, and today I wanted to say a so long, a song of strife, a farewell to a District 67. But before we get into all that good stuff, as always, toss a like and subscribe, and you may want to grab a snack, you may want to grab a drink, because we might be here for a while. So, Song of Strife, everybody's excited, district chat's popping off. Everybody's like, hey, a new season, we're posting stuff on the nodes, there's some trash talk and all that good shenanigans type going on. We're progressing through the story, opening up the new maps, areas, so so we're going through the story. We meet Elsa first, then she takes us to meet her clan. That's a bunch of, like, kids, and it's just kind of her and her brother Soren that are sort of in charge of the clan, and they're just kind of like a hodgepodge collection of kids that have nowhere else to go, and their big thing is they're trying to get their clan recognized as a clan by the Muller faction, and to do that they need to kind of compete in that whole tourney event. So we assist them, we move them along, but we're also chasing this mysterious Magister Merlin, who's really Burial in disguise, orchestrating himself as us in order to besmirch our good name. So we go down, we track them down, we give him the beatdown, we send him packing, a ways, gotta love Burial. And then, you know, we're getting mentored by Brutus along the way, and we meet other characters like Kruger, the whole Grimoire clan arc, where we find out that, you know, that's where they were before, that their father is the clan leader, who is then been corrupted by Burial, and we fight him, defeat him, Kruger kind of takes over the clan, and then we finish the trial to get them recognized, after which we deal with the ramifications of Friesto and him corrupting the land. Of course, we get there because of the kidnapped kids and whatnot going missing, and all that good stuff. And before we know it, we're through the story. It takes about a week, 2 weeks, if you're kind of like keeping up to it. It's not that long. Yes, it was time gated, and that's not like the greatest thing ever, but realistically, you have two options they can do. They can either time gate the content, or they could do a patch release every time they want to release a new patch or new story content. And realistically, we don't want that. It's better to have them time gate it than having them to patch in each new part, because then we're getting multiple patches and potential for issues. So you know what? I'm fine with them time gating the story if they don't want us to blow through it like crazy. Now, it would be better maybe if they had something planned more effective after the story when we finished it, and we kind of cruise through the whole map right here, because we end up like here in Crimson Highlands. Then we get in and we beat Friesto. Overall, the story wasn't too bad. It wasn't like uber complicated. It wasn't hard to follow. There weren't like any huge twists or turns. And Friesto, he wasn't like this great, omnipotent, powerful villain. He was just kind of corrupting the land through his presence. It was a lot of fun. I had a blast doing it. We got through it. Then we got Friesto as a hero. That was fun. Speaking of Friesto, we can kind of like getting into the stage side of things. So it's one of the big things of the game is the AFK stage pushing. So, we had some of us that jumped out early, and we had a good group in our guild, so we could kind of like leapfrog each other until they added some of the newer functions for the suggested formations and all of that good stuff. And then we watched the push meta go from like your standard control to like something a little bit more freeform with like Erin, Florabelle, Arden, Scarletta, Rainer, maybe a Damien, maybe a Huan, maybe a Granny. Something along a little like hodgepodge, but still kind of relied on that control aspect of things. And then Friesto dropped, and he he was like a nuke on the game, I want to say, and he's probably, people don't realize it, but he's probably the catalyst what caused the Exodus. So when Freyasto dropped early on, probably the first few weeks of the season, at least for our side, right? Because we, unfortunately, our season started 10 days late, so we got Freyasto later on. So what Freyasto did was allow for a new entire push meta that was very manual and a little bit tedious, right? Because with Freyasto being on the front line, he could take a pounding. We could then in turn run smoking with Aaron, like a Rowan and a Human or something, right? So we would run. So, and it was basically the idea of the comp was to get everybody into Smokey's third ult while Freyasto holds the line against whatever's out there, and then we just nuke him down with Smokey's third ult. That allowed people that put in the time and effort versus the people who didn't to push far, far ahead. So that's when we started to see like these huge gaps in progression. At this time, a lot of whales in the game, they kind of got upset. You know, I understandably they're paying to buy all this power, and all this power is kind of mute because they get behind in stages because maybe they don't have the time or whatever to push the stages. And Lilith missed the note on that you shouldn't make the content too hard for whales. So what happens is they get upset about the level difference, potentially maybe the release cadency of new heroes, and we have what we'll call the Great Exodus, where a lot of big whales leave the game. This was about probably a month and a half into the season, and I kind of cover that in Battle Drills, what happened with our guild when we saw the Great Exodus. Now, they did release Omis. Omis was allegedly going to let you just auto through, but that was not the case. You still needed to manual Aaron's ults. Omis just added that extra factor of control to reduce some of the RNG elements. Of course, then it was discovered the new meta, which was Omis, Lumont, Smokey, Rowan, Aaron, which relied pretty much heavily on controlling your enemies, getting them into Smokey's third ult, and burning them down. So this really, like, extended that gap even further. I mean, at least from my point, I was, like, 300 stages at one point ahead of even second place. And if you, like, really scroll down, the further you get down to, like, even, like, second or, like, third and fourth, the gap just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're talking about, like, maybe, like, the time you get to, like, fifth or sixth, or seventh, you've got, like, a 400 to 500 stage gap. And even when you get down to, like, 21, you're talking anywhere in the range of, like, 600 plus stages gap. It was a little crazy, so it gave those people that pushed ahead an early advantage in content where the level cap really wasn't there. So, like, we could hit Supreme Arena level cap quicker, Supreme Arena hard cap quicker, Dream Realm soft cap quicker, and eventually when they added it in the hard cap on Dream Realm, so we could hit that quicker too. I mean, eventually it goes away, but, you know, there's that hard caps in there. So there was a little controversy there. Hopefully, you know, they'll do some stuff to address it in the new season. We'll see. I think that was one of the bigger areas of contention, at least for this season, is you could get a huge advantage early in the season by pushing anywhere from 300 stages plus ahead. You'd get at, like, because it was the way it factored out, it was about every 30 stages you pushed ahead of someone, you got about an extra reso level or extra hero level a day. So if you pushed, you know, 300, that's like 10 a day, and then it just kind of, like, it gets crazy. So yeah, that just kind of blew out of control. Then, you know, we had some new game modes, Supreme Arena opens. That was fun. You know, hey, I moved up to the top 4, and we'll call it the first cycle of Supreme Arena. Never really dropped too far from the top 5. I think maybe like 1 or 2 calculations I was out of the top 5. But, you know, hey, I got all the rewards out of it. I'm happy in that sense. I've been as high as 1. But, you know, it was just like climbing up and just felt a little stagnant. There wasn't really anything in there to really like spice it up. At least at the top, at least as I built my account over time, I was able to then easily contend with the bigger whale, I'll say, in our district that whaled a lot heavier earlier, built up their account really high, and they kind of sat in first place for a couple months with little to no competition. A couple of people in our guild, of course, they built up a little bit more. They were able to contend with them, and then eventually I was able to contend with them. Yeah, Dura's trials. This unlocked eventually. I will say I kind of liked it. This is the where you get the charms, right? And we have the different levels. So I'll just point out some issues that I had with this whole thing, right? So a lot of this was very heavily time gated, and a lot of it just felt like there's a lot of like filler floors in here, we'll say, right? Because you're not really getting much. So you have the rewards here were like the same, right? So you got the legendary, or no, you got the elite, then you got the epic charms, then we got the legendary, and then it took forever to like feel like till we finally got like the myth charms. It took forever to get those, and you just had a lot of these like filler levels. It felt like I felt like these could have been done away with. They could have just, I mean, if they were gonna time gate it, but like at the same time, you could have done away with a lot of these fillers, and then at the end, they added these last few levels. And the advantage of completing some of these is that you would open up the ability to pick parts and target certain heroes. This is something that should have been there early on. That would have been very helpful, because the fact that it was very RNG made it very difficult to target specific heroes that you needed for Dream Realm, for the beetle that was up at the time, all of that other good stuff. That, and it doesn't really feel like the floors were really balanced all that well. So maybe we'll see some improvements for the next season, but I enjoyed collecting the charms, building the sets, tinkering with just different charm sets for Dream Realm, Arena, the Primal Lord, Ravaged Realm at the time, right? Because you need to like kind of like charms as that layer onto your character where you can kind of like tweak their stats a little bit to gear them up. I could compare it to other games where you have different sets of gear, say for PvE content, and different sets of gear for PvP content, and then we could break it down into like a subsection of PvE where you may have different like game modes, and you use different sets of gear for those different game modes, right? So you have the charms, and they can affect different things there, so you may do that. So we go to like Arcane Labs. This was one of the bad things, I would say, is that Arcane Labs had nothing. You only were ever really pulling or running Arcane Labs for ranking, initially, for the most part, for the first like guild event that gave about half a Celestial's worth of medallions. Please bring that back, Lilith. But we were just running Arcane Labs for ranking. Honor Duel, at least they changed it up. They changed their reward structure some, and we were running Honor Duel for kind of like the same thing, just to try to like get in that rank. And you would have to, when Guild Supremacy came out, you would need to run it like once a day, have a couple of people do that. We had Guild Supremacy, which was it's an interesting concept, right? So it's in a way, everybody contributes their points by completing the activities. It was a little heavily dependent on everyone being active every day. And for an AFK game, that's kind of bad. At least they fixed that after like 2 days, so that we didn't have to worry about every player being active every day. So if someone was like, say you're on vacation, right, and you can't get on every day, then it's not a problem. If you have someone, maybe you're sick and you're in bed all day, you don't really have a lot of time, real life things. It's to expect to have 30 people do something a day is ridiculous. So, you know, at least they changed that. You know, it was fun. It was kind of like the boss was a little meh, I would say, at least on the seasonal side, because until you got until like the 20s where you needed at least 2 to 3 people to hit the boss to kill it, one person would get, it was basically whoever got to the boss first killed it. And we'll talk about that kind of like too with the rankings. Of course, it doesn't want to open up. So one of the issues I think I had with the rankings, right, it wasn't, there was no like differential in who, the only way that someone finished first over second in the rankings for guild supremacy, at least on our district, was the fact of who got to the boss first after reset and knocked it down, right? So if like you had 1, 2, 3 go and you got it first, you got first. If you got it second, you got second. And there was no like way to like differentiate, or there was no like tiebreaker. So essentially you had a tie, what I would call, but it was just like first come first serve. Not really the best method, but we'll see if that changes for the future. We had battle drills. We had 2 new battle drills. Let's talk about battle drills, because battle drills, they kind of like paint the picture of what happened during the season. At least you can, you know, kind of like look at it. Alright, so let's go to round 1. This is when everybody was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. We had a ton of people still playing the game, a ton of people still active. Our guild was on top. We were the big bad empire. The Rebel Alliance formed to take us down, but ultimately, like the Sith Empire, we self-destructed. So we go to round 1, and you know, we're cruising along. We had a really good battle plan. We had a lot of active players. I'm sure, you know, everybody is going at it the same too, and they're trying to get that #1 slot. Then we get to round 2, you know, not too much later. We've still got most of our active players, but in between then is when Freyasto drops. Now, this is when we had like an issue within our own guild. We kind of like self-destructed. We lost a lot of our, I'll say, we lost our biggest whale at that time. We lost a lot of mid-spenders at that time. So that kind of caused some drop off, opened up the territory for other guilds in the district to kind of like move up in the ranks and take over. And that's kind of like the story, right? So we kind of like do that. We bounce back, and that's just kind of how it is. And you know, but I'll say this, is at least from our server was one of the dying servers, I'll say, is where in between rounds we started to lose 6 to 7 people around. So right, so here we lost, we had the, what we'll call the exodus, right around in between 2 and 3. We kind of had a little bit of an exodus where we lost all the big people in our guild. Now we were able to place them with comparable people, but then we kind of like, the exodus kind of started to happen as the season started to go over. I think this is when we had lost 7 people in between rounds. We managed to bulk up. We're still short 1 person, still trying to fill. But yeah, we lost about 5 to 6 people in between each round. So it's been rough, just as people have been leaving our server. Now, I will say, from our server side, it seemed like we did have some toxic elements within our server, that kind of caused people to leave, and when they left, they didn't exit gracefully, we'll say. So, like, even the second guild on our server fell off hard, our guild fell off, and yeah, it's just been a mess. My hope is that maybe we'll get like some kind of merge, or we'll be able to do cross-server guilds or something just to get another pull. Because while I feel like we have a really active, good group now, my fear is that in the long term is if we lose more people, I'm having a very, you know, even as the #1 guild on the server, we're having a terrible time just recruiting people. It's not like the best thing to recruit, and we only recruit via invite. I don't recruit via post because obviously #1. So this is fun, right? So we have the two different battle drills. We have the spider drill. Um, you know, I'll say this about the battle drills. While I don't mind the level of coordination it takes to complete the battle drills, the reward structure isn't there, right? So if we look at the seasonal battle drills, they were a little bit more intense. You need a lot more coordination to complete them. However, if you compare this to the preseason with the Bloom Mother, you get the same exact rewards. So you're putting in a proportionally larger amount of time and effort coordinating people, getting people to do what they need to do correctly into doing these battle drills, but you're not really rewarding people for it. Where all we're getting is the same participation awards we get, right? So we get the participation rewards, which is the letter reputation, so 5 epic recruits, you know, and that's fine. Participation rewards good. But it's all, and then you get maybe a random chance, right? So we get these chests of valor, you get the thrill seeker, or you get the cautious collector. Uh, not the best reward system. It needs to have like a bigger reward attached to it, so we can at least try to motivate players to get it done, and get through it. This is just, it has not been the greatest thing ever. So you know, and in here, not to forget, like I mentioned them before, we had the primal lord. We only had one primal lord. Sadly, it was just Crystal Beetle. We never really got like a second one, right? So if we go to it on the map, it was over here. And this is kind of like one of my things is, I was like, okay, well, in the preseason it was 42 days long, and we had two different primal lords in a 42-day span. Here we had, it took like a month to open up, I want to say, maybe a little bit longer, and then we only ever had one. Now, if you look at the area on the map, you can fit multiple markers here. If they're really lazy, what they could have done is just reuse the same boss multiple times and just had multiple markers. Maybe they could have done it 3 times, so we would have had like a red marker and a blue marker. They could have just looked like this, just shaded differently, right? And you could put one here, and you could put one here. You know, this was a lot of fun, but we can talk about this, like, right, this is one of the bigger whale accounts that we lost, and I'm sure if you go through a lot of these things, you're gonna see a lot of these accounts that are not in guild, not in guild, you know, that ranked pretty highly here, that just let the account, like, dead account. They weren't in our guild, they quit. I don't know how they got into the second guild. No clue there, like, not in guild, right? So a lot of people that are, like, in the top 50, they dropped. They just stopped playing. It's a shame, but it is what it is. So that was, like, Beetle Lord. And then, you know, we just finished up the second round of Crystal Clash. So, I mean, they had other events, right? We had the Astral Fair, which was kind of especially at first, it was really bad. I think they've come a long way. I liked it when it had the 5 events better. This time we only have 3 events, and they're kind of like, but one's always up, and then they're pretty quick turnaround time on the others. They did improve that. That was nice. I would have preferred to have all 5 events, but that's just me. It has good rewards. There's no Joyous Feast this time. That is one of the events that did get excluded, because we did have, during the Crystal Seeding event, we did have the Joyous Feast there. So maybe that's why they left it out this time. Speaking of in-game events, right? So we had Astral Fair. We just finished up the second round of Crystal Clash. This is the preview for next season. We had these clan reps. This was a little controversial, right? I think it was a nice concept to be able to have quests that you could do out in the world, and you could build up rewards, right? Because we built up the 2 artifacts via these things. We got rewards, we got extra tokens. I mean, look, if you permanently see, the second one was some cosmetics, experience, dust to craft the mythic charms, and hero dust. And some Duras tokens, right? And cosmetic. That's fine with a border at the end. I think the daily quests were a little lackluster, a little repetitive, right? It was chasing terror birds, guiding a lizard, maybe inconsequential fight. It was a little repetitive, a little boring. You had the first one, which was you would get every 2 days, you would get essentially another level, and as you got level, you got the rewards, right? So we got the diamonds, which was good. This is how we opened up the other 2 artifacts. We got some cosmetic rewards, XP, Duras tokens, dust. Nothing too crazy. It was, I think they could have done something else with it to make it more like filler content. Again, maybe have more factions to have that you can get rep with, maybe extend the period of time, maybe do it so we can pick and choose rewards, that type of thing, right? We've all probably seen a rep quests and things throughout other games where you just get different rewards for completing different tasks for the various factions or whatever that you need to complete them for. That was fine. They added in fishing. I like it. It's easy. You can just fish out the gold nodes each day. You can go crazy. You can just kind of lay back. It's very easy to get this. This is one of those events that should just always be up, right? It's a 40-day event. You have 40 days to do it. You get some rewards. It doesn't take a lot of time. It could easily be always up every 40 days. So after 40 days, it refreshes. If they wanted, maybe they dial down the rewards a little bit, but I think that's fine. Maybe this is just something that just recycles. Maybe they just stick something else over here beside the frame, right? So we just get it every 40 days. You have the typical seasonal growth path. It just shows who's like got the highest level, who's progressed the farthest in stages, and the legend trials, right? Now, I don't necessarily know that having the stages be endless is good, or the legend trials be endless is good. It's not really compelling content, I would argue, or great content. And let's talk about my favorite event next, which is Crystal Clash. Crystal Clash. As you can see, I have to cash in, and we're going to cash in very shortly here because it's time for the story. And I think this is by far and largest the best event that they created in the game, right? So let's go back about almost 2 months now for the first event. There was just too much time in between events. It's one of the events that should probably be about a week long and run once a month, right? So they should have like what the game means is 4 events like Crystal Clash, and then they put them on a cycle, right? So you have like Crystal Clash 1 week, maybe you have like a PvE version of Crystal Clash the next week, or like 2 weeks later, and then you have like an event in between. So you always have like this big in-game event, and then they can start after everybody has had like enough time to progress through the story or something like that, right? So maybe they start like, maybe you want to give people like 2-3 weeks to progress through the story, and then you can start up the event cycle again, right? So we do something like that. So we get to the first one. It's new, it's exciting, right? Nobody really knows what's going on. You pick your node, you don't know what's good, you don't know what's bad, you go out, you can hunt other people's nodes. That's when I came up with the idea that, hey, this is great. This mode is gonna be a great way for guilds to bond, get their guild members rewards, higher rankings, and really fuel that guild rivalry. That didn't happen. That was very disappointing. Now, I'm a very competitive person by nature. Just am, always have been, probably always will be. And I was expecting a bit more. So I said, what does this event need? This event needs a little bit of spice. So the first one, I waited. Now the biggest whale, we went after them, right? Because they're one of the rival guilds. They're number one in arena, or supreme arena, I should say. And we're beating on him, so we're hunting down his node. So we hunt down his node, we nuke his node, right? Well, and everybody seems to just kind of like be in their place and stay there. Nobody's really playing in defense. No one's out hunting. So I guess one day he came back and he hit my node when I was somebody else. Did he wipe the node? No, but he did a pretty sizable damage. So I was trying to win the event. So I go out and I play defense. So everybody goes, oh no, don't hit me, yada yada yada. So what I do is I just tell them, hey, thanks so and so, because I know they have the Rebel Alliance. I'm the evil empire. I'm trying to break the Rebel Alliance. So when I'm hitting their nodes and they're messaging me, I say, hey, thank you to this person. Because what I want them to do is I want that strife. I want that chaos. Did it really happen? No. It was very disappointing. So that's when I concocted the plan. The plan to become the district's biggest villain and serve up the biggest dish of chaos and cause the most drama that I did. Now, District 67, this is more for you than everybody else, but this is how I became the biggest villain. So, it was after the first round of Clash, I said, the next time this event comes around, I need to create the most drama that I can with the event. I need to spice this thing up. This thing is a great event. I love it, but it's stale. And the greatest stories that come from a game, when you play a game, aren't necessarily the stories that the storytellers tell in the game, especially when it's an MMO. It's the story of that the players tell, right? That the players create on their own, the narratives that they drive there. So I concocted a plan of how do I become the biggest villain. How do I do all that fun stuff? How can I spice up the event? Step 1, prior to the beginning of the event, call out the biggest guild in the district, the most powerful, the most active, whatever. Now, in the case of my district, we have this guild called T, and they have 3 separate guilds. You may have seen them in the rankings and the battle drill and whatnot. But essentially, they have 3 separate guilds, at least that I've seen in the rankings. So, they all have T. And the majority of the players have T in front of their name, right? So, it makes it a little bit easier. So, what did I do? A little bit prior to the event, I said, hey, I'm going to hunt down all of the T players in the event and nuke their nodes. So, what did I do? Day 1, I did exactly that. I did exactly what I said I was going to do. I went down, and anybody that had a high node that was in T, so I made sure, of course, I wanted to go for max points, so I could be high in the rankings and high in the standings. So I made sure that I always got my 3 8-10s. And then after that, I just kind of like nuked anybody that I noticed that had a high node, that was in the T guild, maybe some other people too, that were in some of the Rebel Alliance guilds, we'll say. And then I would nuke the nodes of any other players that I saw. Now, of course, I would check the rankings and I would see, okay, well, this player's lower in the rankings. I don't need to nuke them. And I don't really want to target the free-to-play players. There's no advantage in targeting those types of people. I don't want to hurt them in the game because they're the people that actually need the rewards. So what I would do then is I would primarily target the people in the top 10. So you just say what you do. But to be a true villain, you have to do dastardly things. So one of the things I did do is I did use one of the exploits in the game of defending off server. Now, I did it impartially to get higher nodes for defense. I did at that time put out a video, and it was a strategy on how to win Crystal Clash, and it had an unforeseen consequence. It really stirred the drama because it turns out that some of the people in those other guilds watched said video and saw that I did do a test where I tested defending off server. Now, I had always intended to, and I did defend on server for the next 4 days. So the other half of the event I defended on the server, because what's the point of being a great villain if you can't have them come out and hunt you? And that's what I wanted. I wanted them to hunt me. I wanted them to find me. That's what I wanted to see, because that's when I would know that the plan worked. Now, the first day so that was, I think it was like day 5 or 6 of the event that I had that. But then I was on the server after that. So the first day we're on the server, right? We go on the server, we're there, we see our node, nobody touches it. Nobody touches my node. And I'm like, well, this is a disappointment. So I had a little bit of trouble getting a node day 2. Day 2, I jump in, I got a good node, and I'll show you what happened. So let's see. Let me pull these up. So we have 9. Alright, so we had 9-4, right? So as you can see, I had a node I defended with one of my guildies that I had already defended with earlier in the event. I thought for sure they were going to find this node, because in my guide I said to, if you're looking for people, check hide nodes, check who's in their guild. This is actually in a pretty common spot. I thought for sure I was going to get nuked. Nothing. Nada, zippo, zero, zilcho. We didn't get the desired effect until day 2. And this is what happened. One of them found my node. Then 2 of them nuked my node. Which is exactly what I expected, right? So you can see they got through. Yeah, so they got it. They got it. That's fine. I expected that. That was good. But then we got back to the next day, right? So here we are. I defend with one of my guildies. No attacks. And then we go to the last day. You know, here I am with just someone, like I said, off my friends list. And again, no attacks. But, hey, it served its purpose. Once the drama hit, I knew it had worked. And it was great. And as in all things in life, I am currently number 7th. I have not cashed in. I wonder if they think they won. But, as they say, the bad guy always wins. And there we have it, and we're back in first. So, that was Crystal Clash. Oh, that was a blast. Now will I play the villain the next time I do this event? Who knows? It depends how spicy things are. It was a little difficult, I will say. I did have, just when the drama got good, and just when things started to heat up, and I was really gonna punch in that second phase of the plan, of course real life decides to happen. So I just kind of had to, like, chill back a little bit, and just kind of, like, do what I could. And it was what it was. If anything, you know, I just wish I could have been a better villain throughout the whole event, rather than just the first half of the event. I won't try to come up with more dastardly deeds now. One of the things I did suggest to the devs via the WhatsApp is that if you're going to allow, first off, if you're going to allow people to defend cross-district, right? So if I'm defending somebody else with a different district, that node should be available on both maps. That way, you can't hide, right? Because it's not really fair to everybody in the district, especially if they want to play defense, if they want to go for that top spot, because one of the key things in going for that top spot is playing defense. It's not really fair to those people. Can you do it? Yes. Is it the best thing? No. Sometimes you're better off defending on your own server, because if you have a strong account and nobody can touch you, you're fine. But as one of the things is, as you know, I found out during the season, is that once you get people within like 1 to 2 million of each other, there's no real advantage. Like P3 to P4, there's no like huge advantage. Sure, you get the defender's advantage, but the attacker gets multiple attacks on your team. They can bring in allied heroes, so there's no huge advantage if you're running P4 and you're getting attacked by someone with like P3, we'll say, there's no huge advantage, even P4 to P4, because they can bring in the extra heroes, right? So there's no real advantage. So that's one loophole that I'd like to see closed. And then if you're on a seasonal server, you should not be able to defend on an off-seasonal server. So right, so like when I did the cross thing with my pre-seasonal server to test out, and I was actually able to do it, I was a little surprised. I don't think that you should be able to do that. But hey, I didn't make the game. I didn't make the rules. I just used them to my advantage. And that was Crystal Clash. So at this time, the only other event we really have up going is a Ravaged Realm. And you know, we're gonna have a blast with that. We're almost at the end of the squad rotation, and then we got the other version, which just looks like we're just gonna run the Ultimate Siege, which looks like we're just gonna run all the squads at the same time, and it's just gonna pull like an average or something based on our highest score, and that's how it's gonna calculate the final ranking, which is fine. I'm feeling like I'm gonna get that top 20. I'm excited. So specifically, as we'll say, pertains to say on District 67, it's been a blast. I enjoyed playing the villain. Would I do it again in a heartbeat? I would. It needed to be spiced up. That the game got a little stale, I'll say, especially in this last month and a half, right? We didn't really have a whole lot of content going on. Yeah, we got fishing, we had battle drills, but that's not, I say content, and by content, I mean compelling content, like story-driven things, or in-game events that you can use to drive story. Some people may use the word drama. I'll use the word story, and we drive it there. But hey, maybe we'll see each other in the future, and there's certainly no hard feelings on my side. If there are on your side, well, that's your problem, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. As always, toss any comments or questions below. Bye.